Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Welcome to the Living a Nutritious Life podcast. We're back from a little break. I'm your host, Keri Glassman, and I'm so excited to be here today with Maria Claps and Kristin Johnson from Wise and Well, a women's health and hormone education practice. Together, Kristen and Maria have developed a deep specialty in perimenopause and menopause health through their clinical mentorships with multiple MDs and naturopaths specializing in hormone replacement therapy. Fun fact, Maria is also a Nutritious Life certified coach. Also, they're the authors of the recently published book, The Great Menopause Myth. You can read their full bio in the show notes. Anyway, today we're talking all about one of your favorite topics, hormones, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We covered a lot. I tried to ask all of those questions that I thought you listeners have, such as hormone testing and how often we need to do it, and the difference between bioidentical and synthetic hormone therapy. I know you're ready to go on this topic, so let's dive in. And as always, please rate, review, and share. I'd really appreciate it. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Welcome, Maria and Kristen. I am so excited to have this conversation, and I am pretty positive that every single one of our listeners today is excited to hear this conversation because we are going to be talking about your new book. Congratulations. And all about menopause. So before we even go further, I'm going to share with everybody, and for anyone watching the video of this, you can see this beautiful book called The Great Menopause Myth. I am so excited about this. I'm so thrilled for both of you. Maria, obviously, I've known you a long time now. You were a student in the Nutritious Life studio a while ago. I know you were an OG. You really were. You were an OG because I remember you just finished a masterclass and you were at a masterclass in LA that was, yes, yes. Yes, but I was going back to the first one, 2000, all the way back to 2017. So you really are an OG Nutritious Life peep, which I just love. And I'm so beyond excited for you and all that you've accomplished along with your partner in crime here, Kristen. Yes, and it's so nice to meet you, Kristen.
You too.
And
Thank you.
really, I'm just, again, I'm thrilled that not only that you put out this incredible book, but I'm thrilled for everyone that gets to read it because this is a tricky time of life. And I'm 51. I get it. I'm right in the thick of all of this. So this is a conversation I have with friends, with family members, with clients, with students of ours in the Nutritious Life studio. So the conversation about perimenopause, menopause is a conversation that I'm having on a daily basis. And I know how confused people are. And one of the things I love about this book is that I don't even think of it as a book. I think of it really as a manual. It is like your manual, and you don't have to read it front to back. You can really, open it up to the section that you might be curious about or need to check something out. And you give so many resources. So I really do think it is such a great, yeah, I'm just going to call it a manual. Oh, I mean, it's a book, but you know what I mean? It acts as a manual.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the best possible way. So let's start. It's called the Great Menopause Myth. So let's start with that. What is the biggest myth about menopause? The biggest one. I know there's a lot of myths. But what's the biggest one you think?
Yeah, I think Kristen would agree with me on this, but so I'm just going to kind of take a shot at this. And if she doesn't, she can say, but I think I'm safe to say that we both think one of the biggest myths around menopause is that if you don't have prototypical symptoms, they tend to be hot flashes,
Yep,
or sleep and things like that, that you're okay. You're okay. Nothing's really wrong if you don't have symptoms. Do you agree, Kristen?
I agree. I always struggle. I think it's equally important for us to say the myth that I think is a big issue is that it's all about losing your menstrual cycle.
Sure. They're a little bit neck and neck.
They are. Yeah.
Well, I think they're both really good points to bring up, though, because the first one, Maria, that you said that you're okay if you don't have symptoms, that's something that I have a conversation about all the time, because I talk a lot about, regardless of even putting menopause even aside, I talk about health span and longevity and living well and living optimally. It's not just about living long it's living your best, feeling your best. You don't have to kind of just get through, right? You can feel great. Right? You can feel great at 50. You can feel great at 60. You can feel great at 85. Right. So living optimally is something that's a conversation I have a lot. And I think when it comes to menopause, it really is important to bring up because, like you said, if you feel okay, then you probably don't need to think about hormone therapy, or you just kind of power through, you're fine. But you might not be setting yourself up for optimal health 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and 30 years from now.
That's right.
And there's a lot of things that you can do in perimenopause and menopause, which you're going to share with us today. But there's all these things that you can do to set yourself up for much better health and to prevent, not only prevent different diseases, but also to just feel better, more energetic, and be more focused and have better cognition. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up.
Can you be a part of our team? Because you're speaking the language.
I love it. Well, yes, anytime.
You've got your own thing, but
anytime.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad you brought that point up. It's not just about, I feel fine, I guess I'm okay. Like there could be more that you could be doing.
Sure.
So that's one thing. And then I think what you brought up, Kristen, it is also important because it's not just about, not menstruating anymore. I don't get my period. I don't have those hormones anymore. I don't want to get pregnant anyway. It's fine. I think a lot of people kind of brush it off like, well, what do I need those hormones for anyway? I'm not having any more babies. Well,
I think we have those two related, right? My point is that the reason why not having symptoms doesn't mean you're in the clear is because it's more than just losing your menstrual cycle.
Correct.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of that, and I think a lot of women, that's where they get lulled, right? Either no symptoms or I'm thrilled that I have no cycle and therefore this is a great thing.
Exactly.
And this, we're not trying to say it's a horrible thing because Maria and I would never go back to our 30s and 40s, to be perfectly honest. We love our 50s and we're looking forward to our 60s. But why? Right? Why is because we've locked into what it is that can help us with that health span as we age. And it's because we recognize that menopause is more than just symptoms and losing your cycle.
Perfectly stated. Love that. So you also say in the book that it can be an amazing time. Menopause can be an amazing time in life, but nothing about it makes us healthier.
True.
Can you dive into that a little bit?
So when you understand how hormone sufficiency coordinates every aspect of the female body, every aspect of our health from things as people that never put together the fact that your estradiol sufficiency, your hormone sufficiency, actually enables better gut health, that you have better bone health, that you have better mood, that you have better hair and skin. So that's sort of like the little vanity things, but that counts as well, that you have a better vaginal microbiome. Like the vaginal microbiome, when we lose estradiol, it just does not, it's just not healthy anymore. So that's, a big part of what we mean by that. What else? Like we catch up to men in cardiovascular health, or we surpass them in, cardiovascular health is sort of like one of those that's pretty well acknowledged is an issue for women as we age. So yes, it can be a great time with the right supports, the right nutrition, the right mindset. But if we were just to look at the physiology, and it's not a healthy time unless we intentionally make it healthy.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to follow up and say, that we're not naturally healthier. These shifts in hormones don't make us healthier, but if we're intentional about our lifestyle choices, we can absolutely be healthy, and perhaps even healthier than we were when we were in our 30s or 40s.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, we just have to be extremely intentional about it.
Extremely, unfortunately.
One thing I say to people during this phase of life when they say, what can I do? I'm starting to gain weight and this, and I have some brain fog and I'm irritable, and, we're going to get into hormone therapy, but just in general, sometimes I just say, a lot of the things you need to do at this stage of life are things that you were told to do in your 20s and your 30s. You just got away without doing them. Now you have to double down on them. We talked about, sleep is important for a 20-year-old as much as it's important for a 50-year-old, but you might not get away with not sleeping well because you already have other things working against you that are waking you up in the middle of the night. And you can't get away with that, with getting those 4 hours of sleep like you used to in college or whatever. You can't do that. So you have to, I always say, like, double down, focus in on many of those healthy habits that we should have already had in place, which actually, I don't know if you agree with that, but it leads me to I guess the point of, like, why going into this stage of life healthy is even important too, because if you have some of those behaviors and habits in place, you're going to be in a better place when you get to perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, it's pay now or pay later, right? If you're a girl in your 20s and 30s, it's either double down now, or know that when the wall comes, it's going to hurt hard. It's just going to be that way. And it's a double-edged sword, that kind of mindset, right? Because you do have women who are like, wait a minute, I did all the things in my 20s and 30s, and my 40s are now, the earth is kind of shaking beneath my feet. Was none of that worth it? And you see women who are like, throw the baby out with the bathwater, forget it, I'm done. I've doubled, I've been doing all the things, my supplements, my sleep, my exercise, my food, etc. And it didn't work. And we're like, no, it's because you're missing a piece. Right. It's this time of life. You don't have the whole picture. Your body was providing that missing piece in your 20s and 30s. And now in your 40s and 50s, it's up to you to deal with that missing piece.
Right. And so is that where you then would throw in the hormone therapy?
Yeah.
And again, but that is a perfect point. For some people, though, getting a little more intentional about different lifestyle habits can be enough. And for many people, though, I would say the large majority of people, they do need to, they need some hormone therapy, which I know is a favorite topic of yours too. So we want to get into that for sure.
Well, I'd say it's enough for what, though, Keri?
Right.
It's enough to maybe not lose your physique. It might be enough to not have a hot flash. It might be enough to, I don't know, avoid some wrinkles or whatnot. But it's actually not enough if it is about health span, right? So it can blunt and mitigate what some women are going to experience as perimenopausal symptoms. But at a certain point, even all the things lined up in a bucket, doubled down, decades of investment in it, etc., you're still going to overdraft your account.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You just don't have those hormones anymore. I just think that I guess I'm making the point too, that there are some people that it's not going to be appropriate for, right? Maybe.
Oh, for sure. We acknowledge that, like, Lynch syndrome, active liver disease, things like that. And
I think it's far fewer than most people like to say. And
I agree with that. I do. I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of women self-select out of hormone replacement therapy because they're under misconceptions about either its safety or their eligibility.
Absolutely.
And that's what we try and, drive down into women, is that the vast, vast, vast majority of women are candidates. It's fine to not choose it. Just make that an informed decision.
I 100% agree with you. And I'm so happy you just said it like that, because I think that is the problem, that many women, like you said, just sort of opt out with minimal information or misinformation, or what a friend said, or what someone saw on TikTok, or, they really do, or from even going to a doctor who they've been going to for 20 years, who is not an expert in hormones. And I think that's a big thing to say, oh, my doctor said, nah, forget it, because that doctor just isn't up to speed. That doctor is not an expert here, which is something that I always tell people when it comes to hormones, whether it's your endocrinologist or your cardiologist or your GP, you need to go to a doctor who is a hormone expert. And that is key. Again, I don't know how you feel about how you feel about, in terms of selecting your doctor for this, but it is just key that you're going to a hormone expert.
We agree with you. But we would say that it's actually really hard to select a doctor if you don't have a baseline of understanding yourself, of what the hormones do. And, how should you be taking them, and what are your goals, and what type of a relationship do you want with your doctor? So those things are all important, and we address all of those in the book. So in other words, yes, the doctor is the expert. You're the expert in your own body. Doctor is the expert in hormones, but you do need to go in with a baseline of understanding.
I completely agree with that as well. Yeah, I didn't mean go to an expert and not have any information.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I think it's a super important point. It's like, you're going to be able to get more information from that expert, and if you're able to ask more informed questions. If you go in with no knowledge, you're not going to be able to ask great questions. And sometimes, by the way, I even tell people, bring a friend. Bring a family member. If you don't think you're fully informed, like, you can bring someone else into the office with you. Yeah, absolutely. Because sometimes people don't know the questions to ask. And so that's why they do, like Kristen, what you said, they just sort of opt out because maybe their doctor only, wasn't totally informed, or maybe the doctor was informed, but the person asking the question, they didn't ask a lot of questions, and it led them down a different road, and they've got 5 minutes with them, and then conversation over, they never followed up on the conversation. So there's a lot of misinformation that can happen. And I agree with you, Kristen, though, that I do think that many, the people that shouldn't have hormone therapy are probably a lot farther and fewer between than the people that aren't. I mean, what's the percentage of women that are on it that are in that age bracket? It's a very small percentage, right?
4% of women in the United States who take hormone therapy, and yet probably 95% of women could be and should be taking it.
Right, which is wild.
Yeah. And I think too, the other thing is, we get white lab coat syndrome, right, when we go into doctors, which is why I love your idea of bringing a friend. But I want women to be certain they understand that just because someone might offer you HRT or have a script pad on which they are willing to write you a prescription for HRT does not confer them HRT knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right. And sadly, menopause is having a moment, which I say sadly because of the consequences of the sort of rush to jump into answering women's symptom complaints. But the reality is too many people are hanging a shingle right now after doing a weekend certification on one modality of HRT. And this gets back to what Maria said, like, HRT is not a one thing. It's not a bottle of Advil. It's not a commercial product off a shelf. There's this massive spectrum of options. Each hormone in isolation has different ways to be taken and optimized and whatnot. And so if you don't know if your doctor knows all those things, you better know all those things so that you can ask the questions and get the therapy that you're seeking.
I also think there's a lot of trial and error that ends up happening. And and I think what happens is sometimes someone tries something. And I mean, I have to tell you, when I first went on progesterone, it reminded me of being on birth control for a year of my life when I was in college, and it made me crazy. I just was miserable. And I said, okay, this is not, and I don't want to make I don't need to share the whole story, but the point is that I knew, though, I was a believer in hormone
Right.
therapy. I knew that this must just not be the right dose and the right time. So
Yes.
I ended up waiting 6 months because I still was, at a time where I didn't think I may not have been ready for it. So I put it off. And then when I tried it again, I tried it at half the dose and it was great and amazing.
Just
But I think that, again, I had a certain amount of knowledge in that. I think if I didn't, I may have said, oh my God, I'm never touching hormone therapy again.
So many women do. They
Right,
do.
they
And I
do
think
that.
it's
I know.
the worst tragedy is for a woman to be given HRT that's suboptimal for her.
Right.
Right? There's suboptimal generally, and then there's relatively as well. Suboptimal for her, it doesn't go well, and then she blames HRT generally.
Right. That's what I
And
mean.
now her
Exactly.
quality of life, her health span is at risk
Right.
because of one kind of crappy experience with it.
Right. And that's why I say, like, you have to work with someone, again, who's going to know how to adjust, who's going to explain to you that there might be some adjusting, who's going to give you all of that information. So I think that that's really, really important for people to know that. And you know what? I want to go back to one thing we were talking about. Maria, you started bringing up heart disease, and I just want to get into, before we dive a little bit deeper into hormone therapy, I want to just ask more about, obviously, as our hormones change during this time of life, we are at greater risk for, as you mentioned, cardiovascular disease. But there's also, our bone health is at risk. We're greater risk for neuronal degeneration and conditions like Alzheimer's disease. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think that again, that's just another reason that people should be open-minded to hormone therapy who may not be.
Sure.
So I don't know. Can you dive into a little bit of that, or what we're at risk for with these shifting hormones a little bit more?
We can kind of, women need to understand that, again, this is why it goes back to, it's not just about the last of your cycle, because we all, as ladies, hopefully by now, know that over that 28-day menstrual cycle that we used to have, there was this beautiful rhythmic dance between sex hormones that came out of our ovaries and a little bit about our adrenals. We associate that with fertility and menstruation.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is those are just two items on a very long list of biologic processes that are being regulated by that 28-day cycle and rhythmic dance of the hormones. So when women start to learn that literally from top to bottom, we have receptors throughout our female body. I think Maria pointed out, maybe not on red blood cells. They're not on red blood cells, but they're on, the glands of our eye. They're in our optic nerve. They're in our, ear canal. They're on our skin. They're on our bones. They're on our heart. They're on endothelium. They are everywhere. Liver, gut microbiome, vaginal tissues. So many things that we don't associate with hormones normally, because we just think of them as sex and fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So when we lose them as catalysts that regulated the biological processes of all of these body parts and systems. And that is where we start to see that health decline. So this is why, yes, the big ones, the cardiometabolic health, the bones and the brain, and let's say even the autoimmunity issues. That's pretty much a guaranteed for every woman who's aging and losing her hormones, that those big ones are going to be at risk. But each woman's going to have other things too that she experiences. And it might be, changing tinnitus, having tinnitus constantly, right? It might be anxiety. It might be the sleep loss. It might be, increasing what used to be a managed autoimmune disease will suddenly be no longer managed on the therapies that you were using. There's so many things that women go through, and it's very individual. What you're going to have for your experience is different than me, and it's different than Maria. And so that's why we just want women to understand it's literally top to bottom. Our body is this incredible system. It was dependent our entire post-puberty lives on our sex hormones. So when we lose them, everything becomes disrupted and decoupled. How it manifests in each woman is going to be different, but the big ones are pretty much locked in.
Right. And it's really wild, because I don't think people understand that they might have different body odor. They might have, like you said, ringing in their ears.
Burning tongue.
Yeah,
right?
burning tongue. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that can happen that we just aren't associating with our hormones shifting.
Yeah.
We're just not making that connection. And so we don't even think, we think, oh, we're not getting hot flashes. We're not having any, any
And
menopause symptoms.
can we say why? Can I offer why we're not
Yeah.
making a big reason why we're not making that connection is that the kind of vaulted 3-letter agencies, the NAMS, which is now goes by Menopause Society, only recommends hormone therapy for women with symptoms. And typically those symptoms are hot flashes and osteoporosis. So again, there are other ways to deal with these issues that crop up. You've got your beta blockers and your metformin and your other things. And again, Kristen and I are not at all anti-conventional medicine. If you need it, you need it. But we stop and wonder, might so many women be able to avoid those things had they done the lifestyle and the HRT and started it before they need it?
Right, because you're not necessarily getting to the root of the problem. And that's like why also I think so many women during this stage of life are put on antidepressants, which, by the way, if you need, there's no shame in that, obviously.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But if it really was hormone replacement therapy that the person needed, then maybe they don't need that. And maybe they'd have many other benefits. So I think like that to me is a very big common one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Keri, not only are they perhaps supporting their mood and their affect, right? They're, again, like Kristen said, they're supporting every system in the body, whether they know it or not.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think that's a really big one. Like going into the office, I'm so irritable, I'm so anxious, I feel depressed. I never felt like this in my life before, and then going on an antidepressant when really maybe they needed some hormone therapy.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I mean, and the sad thing too is we have a lot of women who are delaying having children, and what women are not told, which is perfectly fine to have that choice. But when you're postpartum, whether you have a baby in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, when you're postpartum, you're kind of in a default state of menopause, particularly if you're nursing. And so now you've got these women who are having babies 40, 43, 47, and that's wonderful. But then postpartum becomes immediately perimenopausal, if not menopausal. And let's be honest, any of us who've had a baby, that we have the baby blues. I mean, it's very common, whether it becomes kind of pathological or not and needs treatment is a different thing, but it's very much a shared universal experience for us. Why does that happen? Because our hormones are so low, right? And so that it's like we accept it when we're postpartum, but then we're not going to accept it when a woman is perimenopausal, that suddenly we're going to give her an antidepressant instead of giving her the hormones that might actually bring her brain function back up.
Right. Oh, it's so important that you're sharing all this information. I'm so happy you wrote this book. It's going to be such a good, again, a resource for so many women. I get to even use in conjunction with their own practitioner, but just as like their own research to inform them, as you were both saying. Okay. So I have a question about labs, because I hear a lot of, I think there's a lot of conflicting opinions out there on how often you should get your hormones tested. I know some people feel very strongly you need to get your hormones tested all the time or often. And then I know other doctors and practitioners who will say you don't really need them tested because they're going to shift every day anyway, that you might see them on one day, they're going to be different the next day and the next week. So they're not really as helpful. It's more helpful to someone just really has to understand all of your symptoms and look at your age and your history, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel about getting your hormones tested?
You're saying pre-menopause, perimenopausal, you're saying?
Yes, exactly. Okay. During that sort of decade of life.
Yeah.
So we're not against hormone testing. We do think one hormone that gets left out of the picture is something called follicle-stimulating hormone, and that's a brain hormone, and that rises as women are moving through the menopausal transition, aka perimenopause. And once we start to see it over about 2025, particularly 25, it's likely not coming down, and you are pretty deeply perimenopausal, not too far from menopause. So, if a woman is starting to feel symptomatic, and that too will fluctuate throughout the cycle. But again, if you hit that 2025 or so, you need to be paying close attention to symptoms, and you need to really consider the fact that you might be deep in that transition, and you may want to take action. And that action is obviously, hopefully, all the lifestyle things. But as we said at the very beginning of this conversation, that will only take the majority of women so far. I mean, it's just, again, speak to us when, you're over 60. We see a lot of clients who hit about 61, 62, 63. And again, they were the athletes, eating super healthy. And then all of a sudden they're diagnosed with microvascular disease or osteoporosis or something like that. And they're agog. Like, how did this happen to me? But to tie it back to hormone testing, like, sure, hormones do fluctuate, and estradiol, progesterone, if you're a perimenopausal woman with a fluctuating cycle, are of somewhat limited value, but FSH is not. So we would really tell women, it's not an expensive test at all. Throw it onto your lab order, get your doctor to order it, do it often.
Yeah, most women have access to direct labs. And I think the sad thing is there's been kind of this, groundswell around at-home testing. And we want women to know that at-home testing is not accurate for these things. And, we need venous serum blood. We can't be using capillary blood. We can't be using urine, all those things. There are other reasons to test, hormone metabolism and adrenal function and all those sorts of things using some of these at-home tests. But if you're really, really wanting to look at hormone volume, the gold standard is blood serum testing. And so we want to make sure women are focused on that.
And it also seems like to me there's also a value in getting having baseline numbers, even from when you were, again, this is now talking to the younger women out there, that in your 20s and your 30s, it's good to have that baseline so that when you do go into that perimenopause sort of decade of life, people, at least I know, exactly. I know, I think about my daughter's 18. I think about that all the time with her. I'm like, I gotta make sure I save all those numbers somewhere for her. She's going to need them. You need to have all that information, because I certainly don't have that information from that stage of life. Anyway, so I do think there is always value too in having those baseline numbers, and then during different times during that perimenopause phase or stage, I should say. But I do think, again, so I think it's not no testing, and it's not you have to get them done every month or a couple months, because that's probably too much and it will only have, like you said, Maria, limited value. But it is, to some extent, we need to know the numbers at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about HRT. Let's talk about hormone therapy. I know this is such a big topic, and we could talk for 10 hours about this. And everyone, you need to go buy this book so you can dive in and circle, highlight, take some notes so you have all the information. So you got to go buy the book to get all the details. But let's just do a little hormone therapy 101. Maybe I don't even know if you have, I think you have some absolute no's and maybe some, I don't want to say absolute yeses, but absolute, these are check these things out. Ask your doctor about these few things. Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we would say bioidentical hormones would be something everyone should be getting, not synthetic hormones. Now, there's always this debate amongst conventional doctors that bioidentical is a marketing term. Maria and I would say, if you hear anyone say that, that's a tell that they don't understand that what we're talking about is molecular mimicry, and that we are just saying whatever you're going to be putting in your body, please let it be something that actually resembles identically on a molecular level what your body used to produce. Okay, so there could be the argument everything is synthesized because it's not made in the ovaries.
That's what that's what I was just going to say, because I actually just heard someone speak and we were just having this conversation, and they're a believer in synthetic, that synthetic works equally, if not better, and that the bioidentical is still going to come from a plant, and we are not plants. And I mean, so that's there. I know these are very opposing.
Yeah, I mean, we would then answer with say that synthetic chemicals are actually endocrine disruptors, and you're setting the woman up for, cancer risk and some other things in the future. So, looking at molecular mimicry, I think one of the reasons why so many women or so many doctors can be down on the term bioidentical is because when this term became popular, it was about compounded hormones. And there are people who believe that the holy grail, everything should be FDA approved. Now, we could all discuss whether or not FDA approval is actually what it turns out to be based on, everyone's life experiences last couple of years, but we won't go there. Essentially, whether it's commercially available and FDA approved, or it's compounded and personalized medicine, whatever it is, it should be molecularly identical, call it bioidentical. So that would be kind of our threshold one.
Right. Well, and I think some people don't realize that you can get commercially available bioidentical.
It's very, very highly available. Very available.
Yeah. So that would be the first thing is, molecular mimicry. And then the second thing would be to us.
Actually, can I stop you there? Sorry, just in case someone doesn't understand that when you say molecular mimicry, I want to make sure that everyone understands that. Do you want to just explain that a little further before you go on?
Well, I mean, we have hydrogen atoms and, we have, if everyone thinks back to the periodic table or their different chemistry classes, and we have those, kind of models that look at different rods and balls and whatnot that make up an atom or a chemical or a molecule, right? That it just needs to match what 17 beta estradiol looked like.
Which is made by the ovaries.
Which is made by the ovaries, right? Okay. And there are, we do see too many people, including doctors, still confuse the term progesterone. There isn't anything that is actually estrogen. Estrogen is a family of chemical molecules. We talk about estradiol because it's the most impactful of a woman, her biological processes. There are other estrogens, but we focus on estradiol. Then there is a family called progestogens, but most people pronounce that wrong, get it wrong, and just say progesterone. But unfortunately,
I did. I just call it progesterone.
You use progesterone.
You got it right. Yeah. So progestogens can be either synthetic. Those are progestins. Those are endocrine disruptors. They alter the receptor, which is unhealthy, or progesterone, which matches what our body's made, right? So we would say estradiol, progesterone that have the same chemical structure as the molecules that were made by our ovaries. That cleared up then for bioidentical?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think people ask about this all the time. And like I just said, we just had a whole conversation about it this weekend. So it's I think a lot of people have questions about it.
Yeah, I mean, and you synthesize those in a lab from different constituent components. But when we talk about synthetic hormones, what we're talking about are non-molecularly identical chemicals that can trigger some responses like hormones, but they aren't fully recognized by the body the same way because they might have a few different rods and whatnot, in their chemical structure. And because of that, they don't, act or alter the receptor, act at the receptor the same way. I think we talk about it sort of like, if you were to call me and talk to me and leave me a voicemail versus talking to Siri, right? Siri doesn't always get it right because she's not a human, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Bioidentical hormones are always going to get it right because they're just like the human ones that we produced. Synthetic chemicals or synthetic hormones are not going to get it right. They're like Siri.
Okay.
So we would say that. And then we would say, our position is try and get a hormone therapy regimen that can achieve what's called physiologic levels. What that means is levels that can actually create the actions, the biological processes that we had in our youth. And that's going to be protective against mitochondrial aging. That's going to be protective against, not any bone remodeling occurring, et cetera. We need to have robust enough levels of hormones to trigger the signals that we need for our health span. And unfortunately, the standard of care in the United States and elsewhere is to provide women the lowest dose of hormone for the shortest amount of time. And that's because it only takes a tiny, what do you call it, Maria? A whiff of estrogen in order to suppress the hot flash compared to what estrogen is actually going to protect your brain. Two very different amounts.
Right. Well, and I also think that there are people that believe that we're not supposed to get back to where we were in our youth. We're supposed to just reduce these symptoms, protect disease in the future, but we don't really need what we had when we were younger. So I know
isn't that an interesting argument,
that's a big school of thought too.
But why? What's the argument? How do they justify taking the position that 50 and 60 and 70-year-old women don't need to stimulate their body for ultimate health like we did in our 20s and 30s? I mean, if your 18-year-old daughter loses her cycle, right, and she's amenorrhea, what's going to happen? the doctors are going to cause all sorts of alarms, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, we need to make sure that she's got hormone sufficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And let's pretend your daughter, I'm sure this isn't her, but she said, it's okay, I don't want to have babies. Mm-hmm. Right? The doctors would still say, but no, Keri's daughter, you need your hormones for your bones.
No. Keri needs to be a grandma.
Right. But there are women out there who lose their cycle and say, it's okay, I'm done having kids, or I don't care to have kids. But the reality is that medicine is going to respond to that and say, no, you absolutely need those hormones, because otherwise you're going to have all these health problems. So why is it relevant then? But now 50, 60, and 70-year-old women are gaslit and told, no, you don't need that much.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
It's food for thought, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But this is why these conversations are so good, because I do think that so many women get so many different opinions,
noise,
so much different information. There's so much noise. There's so much noise out
there. And can I just address something? You said that you spoke with someone who said that, the synthetic and versus bioidentical, the person thought the synthetic was better. And I just want to say that maybe this was the issue. So progesterone and progestins both protect the uterus, the uterine lining. Okay. They both do that job. Where progesterone has so many more benefits is it also is good for brain health. It's also good for bones. And we don't get that from progestins.
And breasts.
And breasts. I always forget.
We actually know that progestins actually put breasts at risk, right? So you're going to protect the uterus, but screw the breasts. I mean, come on, let's protect the whole body of the woman. Right. I'm
just so happy about my progesterone in my bathroom right now. Okay. Yeah. No, thank you, Maria, for bringing that up. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay. Wait. So we were having the conversation about
our musts.
Yeah. The musts, and then the maybes, things to bring up what you might want to try.
Okay. So we're not fans of pellets at all. So, and the main reason is they're not physiologic. It's just levels are too high. The body just gets this huge bolus of hormones. They also, another downside is they are quite expensive.
Yeah. I've seen so many people have such horrible experiences.
Yep, us too.
So
well,
I'm so
think
glad
of your experience with progesterone.
Yeah.
If you've got a pellet inserted in you and you don't respond well to it, tough bounce, because for the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to have to white knuckle it through.
Yeah,
and that is horrifying.
Horrific. Yeah. That would have been horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific.
Yeah. So I mean, bioidentical and physiologic. So then the opposite of those, not synthetic and not, either supra physiologic, which is one of the things we're seeing with a lot of the testosterone pushers right now. TRT suddenly has become like even embraced by conventional doctors. They're like, I'll just give you some testosterone. And we're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like,
why is that all of a sudden? Why is that being pushed so much right now?
Several reasons, probably because a lot of women are complaining about libido, and it's a valid kind of issue for women. But we would say testosterone should be your last stop. You really need to look at your lifestyle. You need to look at your adrenal health. Are you and your partner 2 shifts passing in the night? Are you over exercising? Are you under eating? Are you under nourishing, under fueling, overdoing it? Staying up till midnight, scrolling your phone, so
dealing with your stress.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, let's be honest, Keri, a little bit of testosterone can make a woman feel like she just drank jet fuel. And who doesn't love that? Right. So it's a really quick reward. The doctor has shut you up because now you're no longer complaining. You might have the libido of a 30-year-old again, but what they're not telling you is that you're now at risk for polycythemia. You're at risk for iron overload. You're at risk for all these other things. But you're like, who cares? I feel awesome. It's like, well, yes, because you're fueling a rocket right now. But this is going to have to come back to the landing pad at some point and deal with Earth. So, So testosterone first, pellets, as Maria said. We will say there's a very large voice in the menopause space who has a popular book who's got an entire chapter where she makes an equivalency to birth control and hormones. So we would say no birth control as HRT. And And then
are you saying that this person says that if you're on birth control, that's fine?
Well, she said that
as hormone therapy.
Yeah, so basically a way for perimenopausal women to deal with symptoms in perimenopause would be to use the birth control pill. And I mean, it wasn't even mentioned in the context of actually needing birth control. It was purely about symptoms. And we would posit that, no, don't be on the pill because it's completely masking your cycle, and your cycle is very much a vital sign. And we want to kind of see what it's doing. And add to that, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists say that it's perfectly fine for women to be on the pill till age 55.
Yeah.
Well, average age of menopause is 51. You're just staying on the pill. You are denying yourself the number one knowledge of where you are in terms of, are you menopausal, are you deeply perimenopausal, and you're denying yourself real bioidentical hormones that have whole health effects on the body. So we think it's a travesty that this seemingly pro HRT doctor is also kind of just green lighting the pill.
Yeah. And all those labs we talked about, good luck getting accurate lab readings when you're on synthetic hormones like birth control pill.
Well, right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've had that conversation with a lot of women who I know that are in 48, 49, 52, 53 on the pill, been on it for 15, 20 years, or off and on, obviously not when they got pregnant, but we're on it for years and are just saying, like, I'm just going to ride right through it and stay on it.
And the same goes for hormonal IUDs, right? They're we can't give them a hall pass just because we're not swallowing them. We still have to acknowledge that hormonal IUDs have systemic effects, no matter how much we're told that it's a local delivery of hormones. The studies do show that we have changes in the breast tissue and things from even IUDs. So, women need to understand that what they might have used in their 30s for contraception, perfectly, understandable that they'd want to take that approach. But in perimenopause, you need to start thinking about your body's health, and you need to sort of unmask what's going on. So that might mean pulling that IUD.
Right. This is so insightful and such an incredible conversation. Like I said, I think it's so important for women to hear these conversations, because I think for so long, as I know both of you know, there was no conversation being had about perimenopause and menopause, and women were just white knuckling it through the stage of life. And you've got to, I always think about that. I feel so terrible for so many of these women that are in their 60s, 70s right now, and were not given the option, and are now trying to
recoup things,
recoup and stay as healthy as they can, where women now, we have these options. And so we have to make informed, intentional decisions. So we have to do our homework, like reading your book, listen to podcasts, do your research, read, ask questions, ask those questions of your healthcare providers. And, again, if you don't feel comfortable asking certain questions, bring a friend that's more informed with you to act as an advocate. But you need to get the answers, because, your life, your health depends on it.
Up to maybe half your life. Yeah,
exactly. We hope, right?
Yes.
Let us all live, not only live to 100, but live healthy to 100 and beyond, which is not crazy. Yeah. So thank you so much. The Great Menopause Myth, everyone, by Maria Claps and Kristin Johnson. Congratulations again. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your wisdom. I'm going to put a link to the book and to your website. And just thank you so much again for being here. One last question for you. I almost forgot.
You warned us this was coming.
What do you do to ignite your nutritious life on a daily basis? I'll start with you, Kristen.
For me, if I don't nail that first meal of the day, the rest of the day I'm playing catch up, and it's going to just cascade into misery. So I am a pro breakfast girl. I like it within the first few hours of getting up. If I'm going to work out first thing in the morning, even a little something, and then hit it hard when I am done with my workout. But I've got to get good protein, good fats, and a really hearty breakfast in.
Well, I'm a pro breakfast girl too. So
good.
Love hearing that. All right, Maria.
Okay, so I feel like I want to copy Kristen, because I 100% agree. I am miserable, and it may not manifest until 3 or 4 o'clock if I don't have a really robust, healthy breakfast. It's probably my favorite meal of the day, if I'm being honest. But since I don't want to copy Kristen and do something a little original here, I'm going to say that I'm just off my center if I don't get a morning walk-in.
Oh, I love that. So good for so many reasons.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I love that. A little morning fresh air, walk, breakfast, my kind of peeps. My kind of ladies. I love it. All right. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Keri.